The idea being that it scans your face with laser beam, I believe, to create a three-dimensional representation of your face. It's very accurate. These have been used by model makers, people who do like Pixar movies for years and years and years, but they aren't designed to be resistant to bypass. And so I don't see any reason why someone couldn't block the laser beam and hold up a video of a laser beam scanning the guy's face, which you rendered in your favorite 3D modeling software. Next up is fingerprints. I'm sure you guys have all heard of some vulnerabilities. The old breathe on it, put a condom on it, put a gummy bear on it, because after all, when you put your finger on a fingerprint sensor, you leave behind a fingerprint. And all you need to do is put something on it to get the fingerprint sensor to think there's a fingerprint on there, and it will read the fingerprint. Of course, swipe-type fingerprint readers were introduced. If those of you who have IBM ThinkPads and think you're super secure might want to pay attention to this one. The swipe-type fingerprint readers took the brilliant idea of, instead of having you put your fingerprint on the sensor, have you put your fingerprint swiped across the sensor. The upshot of this is that there's no fingerprint left on the sensor. Unfortunately, there's also fingerprints left on the laptop, on the door handle, on everything else. Which means that you can dust it for fingerprints, photograph that dusted fingerprint, bring it into Photoshop, do a little bit of tweaking, send it off to your favorite printed circuit board manufacturer, of which there are dozens who will happily do this for you. Get it back, put some Elmer's glue or Second Skin, which is an anti-burn product, which is really great for this stuff. Put some of the stuff on that printed circuit board, super glue it to your finger, go up to that swipe fingerprint sensor and swipe that fake fingerprint across the sensor, which you took from the latent fingerprint on the door handle or whatever, and get into the lock, get into the laptop. The solution here, of course, is trained guards, right? People watching for gummy bear wielding attackers. Well, if you use some Elmer's glue or whatever super glued to your finger, it's not going to look like you're an attacker. It's going to look like you forgot to use skin moisturizing lotion that morning. And nobody's going to spot it. A company came up with something called multispectral imaging as a solution to this problem. They claim that their brand new shiny technology doesn't require any contact between the finger and reader, which means if you're a construction worker and your fingers are covered in dirt, this is really great. It can read underwater, which means if you're in the soaking rain and your hands are massively wet from shielding your laptop or whatever, you can still get into the building. And it will inherently differentiate between a live finger and any kind of fake finger. The idea is that different wavelengths of infrared light will penetrate different distances into the skin. This is something that's been known for a long time and works really well. What they're doing is they take a multispectral infrared light source and use it to photograph the fingerprint with a sensor that is designed to pick up on a whole bunch of broad range of infrared wavelengths. What happens if you're using a fake finger, according to these guys, is that it will pick up not only on the fake fingerprint that you want the sensor to see, but the real fingerprint on your finger underneath. And it'll see this cross-hatched pattern. If you can somehow get around this by, say, using a solid cast finger, you can, then the sensor will still see the blood flow under the finger. I don't know if you've ever seen somebody press their face up to the glass and make some really grotesque stuff to gross out their little sister. But what happens is when you press your finger or any other flesh soft bit up to a hard surface, the blood moves away. It's called blanching. And according to these guys, multispectral imaging will pick up on that blood flow, which doesn't exist in any kind of prosthetic or fake finger, and will make for a very, very different looking data set, which will cause a rejection. Unfortunately, this technology is new enough that nobody's done any research yet. Next one I'm going to talk about is hand geometry. This is kind of cool, because one of the big issues with biometrics is privacy. If you're enrolling your fingerprint into a database, then anybody can crack that database and steal your fingerprint and use that to get in everywhere else. There's been rather a lot of research done, in fact, on reverse biometrics, where somebody takes the database information and creates a fingerprint. But with handprints, they're not unique. I probably have the same hand shape and size as at least somebody else in this room. The rate is about 1 in 100, 1 in 200 or so. This makes for great things when somebody says, ooh, biometrics, isn't that a big privacy hole? And you can say, but wait. Unfortunately, because hands aren't that unique, it's possible to say, find a guy with a similar hand and get him to open the door, or make a dummy hand, which is more or less about what the hand shape and size is. This is the view of the camera inside a handprint sensor. Just for the heck of it, we took this picture, printed it out on a laser printer, after doing some contrast enhancements in Photoshop, cut out the paper hand and stuck it in our handprint reader. Of course, it didn't work right, because at the top right, you see a little wedge. That wedge is a mirror, which reflects across the top of the fingers and shows finger thickness to the sensor. Unfortunately, if, say, the boss has said, darn it, this thing keeps rejecting my hand, do whatever it takes to make it accept me in the morning, and you increase the threshold from the default of 100 to maybe 150, maybe 200, that flat paper hand will work. Anybody can go up to the handprint sensor, enter the code, the verification, the user ID, which you don't tell the user to keep secret because it's no big deal. They can enter the code, put a fake paper hand in the sensor, and get in. The next one we're going to talk about is retina scan. This is pretty secure. Nobody in the public literature has falsified a retina because it's pretty complicated. You have a whole bunch of different optical indices, liquids going on, stuff that to duplicate is a royal pain. Unfortunately, for a retina scanner to work, it has to be pretty invasive. This means that for me to get my retina scanned, I have to go up to the scanner, take off my glasses, and put my eye right up to this scanner and hold it there while this really bright light blinds me for about 30 seconds in order to take a picture of my retina. This is fine if you're the US government protecting nuclear secrets and you have people willing to go through this. But most people in most applications really don't like to do it. And so companies came up with iris scan. This is really great because it isn't nearly as invasive. Irises can be read from a couple inches to a couple feet away with a simple camera. And because irises are so unique, it has a really low error rate. About 1 in a million equal error rate. This means that if you're willing to take a false reject rate of 1 in 10,000, you'll get a false accept rate of 1 in a trillion. Super great, right? Except for one thing. You know that boss of yours, that really egotistical boss that demanded to be given, just for the sake of his ego, access to the entire facility? Well, chances are he's going to be on the cover of some random business magazine sooner or later. And your average business magazine cover portrait has enough resolution to hold it up to the iris scanner and get in. Moreover, if you have an armed guard standing there, checking to make sure there aren't any magazine cover wielding attackers coming up to the sensor, that attacker can print that information onto a contact lens using any number of several custom contact lens services, walk up to the sensor and get in. It's kind of a problem, and nobody's really solved it yet. And last but not least, we're getting into the talk a bit. Signature is kind of the closing thing of any document in the closing part of this talk. Signature recognition. Financial institutions really love this idea. Because what does everybody already do to close any kind of business deal? Now we can verify this finally and technologically, right? Well, first of all, you've got a couple of problems. When people sign their name, it's never quite the same. The image is never quite the same in every signature you make. So you have to use a pressure-sensitive tablet, which measures the pressure on the pen and the velocity of the person signing and the velocity of the pen as people sign their name. Even once you have this, you still get about a 1% equal error rate. This means that the financial institution standard of 0.001% insult rate because they really don't like pissing off their customers, and 1% false accept rate because a little fraud is okay, a lot of fraud is not, isn't workable with this system. Most importantly, though, who here learned to forge their parents' signature in elementary school to go on field trips? Yeah, I know, I did. You go into class, and it's like, damn, I forgot to get that form signed. But I really want to go to the museum of whatever it is. Okay, quick, scribble something down and hope she doesn't notice. And I got pretty good at it. I don't know, I guess some of you guys did probably too. If, as elementary school kids, we could learn to forge our parents' signatures, what do you think about that dedicated attacker who really wants to get into your installation? It's not a very secure system. And that brings us to the end of our talk. We're going to talk about some further reading. If you like physical security, as a member of the board of directors of Tool USA, I'm obligated to tell you to come to Lockpick Village at DEF CON. But if you want some further reading, Ross Anderson's Security Engineering is the book from which a lot of this talk was shamelessly stolen. It's a really great text on the general aspects of security, some great stories, great statistics. Mike has another favorite.
Sure. The Handbook of Multi-Biometrics is fantastic if you're looking for a good overview of how to combine information from different biometric systems and a good overview on biometrics in general. Strongly recommended.
Any questions? Yeah.
What's your opinion of electronic keys and hybrid mechanical?
So the question is, what's our opinion of hybrid electromechanical systems where you would say have a regular key that happens to have a transponder in the bow of the key which communicates with the lock? And these can be great, though you still have the problem that they need power, and you get manufacturers who are really stupid. Like there's one manufacturer in Europe who did this great looking system on paper, used 128-bit encryption, everything else, called the Winkhouse Blue Chip. Unfortunately, they put the solenoid in their lock cylinder in just the wrong place. And any doofus with a really big neodymium magnet could go up to the lock and slap the magnet on the lock and open the door. Yes? Sorry, can you say that louder? Yeah, the printing on the contact lens is a service that people do a lot. The thing that people are still trying to overcome in making this, a real live attack, and this is something that government agencies probably have overcome and nobody simply told nobody about, is that the current resolution of most of the cheap ones, most of the cheap printers, isn't quite enough. And so it's theoretical if you're trying to do this as your Joe average burglar. If you're trying to protect against a serious attacker, I wouldn't bet on it. Anybody else? Going once? Going twice? Sold. Have a good day.